I don't know. I really don't know if this Mets team has the juice. We're just going to have to see. I mean, they have good moments.
They could have 100 great moments this season, but with 100 great moments and a quarter, I can make a phone call. I need wins. Grand Salami, you already know. The next bullet, I'll just say it. He mentioned Tylor Megill as the primary candidate to take his spot in the rotation for the time being.
Tylor Megill has more lives than a cat, okay? If a cat has 9 lives, Tylor Megill has 16. He has double. Give one of the other guys a shot.
Who's your 3-man playoff rotation if the postseason started tomorrow? There's one of those photos where you're like pointing at the fish, but it's not like
the fish is small.
Like if you take away one thing from this podcast, there will be no more fish photos. Do you guys want to see Brett Baty come back as a Met next year? Imagine being on the other side of that sound from Ashley. Like, honestly, how demeaning.
Clock is ticking, all right? I don't have a watch, but like you said earlier, you don't have time to lose to the White Sox right now. Your alarm's going off.
It's a long way home from the 5-out mark with this team.
Oh, God. 6 outs? Lord help us. Mets are dancing with the devil.
This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back into another episode of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. Across the table from me is Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and again for a second straight week, sorry, but we don't have the Sky camera. It is over at the great New York State Fair. But we are excited to be with you. We're also feeling simultaneously a little bummed. We're recording this directly after the Mets just lost to the Padres on a walk-off homer by Jackson Merrill.
Yeah.
Butto gave up the first 2 runs. It was a 2-run homer. And then Edwin Diaz gave up that final home run. We have feelings about it, you know.
Yeah, really disappointing loss today. I mean, to put it mildly, I think, your whole tone kind of changes. They split the series with the Padres. They were in prime position in the bottom of the 8th to take 3 of 4 in that series, and just a really unfortunate performance by the bullpen. But I mean, look, those are the guys we've been saying all season that are the best guys in the bullpen, right? Jose Butto, Edwin Diaz. I think Mendoza could have put in Diaz I think he could have put him in the bottom of the 8th. They were saying he hasn't been worked in days. He needed a couple innings. But Butto's been the reliable guy, so he didn't. It is what it is. They lose on a walk-off. Unfortunate end to the Padres series because they really did look like a better team than the Padres throughout this series, in my opinion, but gotta move on. Luckily, they have an off day. I feel like they could use an off day tomorrow.
Definitely.
And then they go to Arizona.
Yeah, the Mets now are 68 and 63, and they're 2.5 games behind the Braves for that 3rd NL wild card spot. To your point, it's not to say that they couldn't have put Edwin Diaz in earlier, because I definitely agree with you that they could have tried it. But now, based on the way that game ends, you wonder if that would have even mattered.
Right.
Like, so easy to say that now, but if Butto would have done a good job, then Edwin Diaz could have come in and not felt that pressure. I don't ever feel confident when Diaz is coming in after having not been in a game for a few days, and it's a really, really high pressure, high leverage situation. I don't feel good in those times.
No, you're absolutely right. That's where he falters, when he does falter. I don't ever feel confident. Look, if the Mets score less than, say, 4 runs, if they have less than a 4-run lead, I just don't feel good about the bullpen in general, which is just, we know it's been their kryptonite all year. Today's another example of it. I'd like to know just how many games the bullpen has actually blown. I think that'd be a good stat to know where they'd be sitting if the bullpen was a little bit more formidable this year. But look, that's just, it is what it is. Got to move on, got to put it behind them. I think they had a good start to this West Coast trip for sure against the Padres, so got to just try to build off of whatever momentum they had.
And that's something that we'll get more into. But here's another thing that my dad and I were even talking about earlier in the week. When you look at this entire season as a whole, as a collective, and whether they make it into the playoffs or not, of course, for me at least, I'm going to look at some of the things that went well, then I'm going to look at the things that bothered me.
Yeah.
Something that really bothers me is I don't feel like their record is good against the bad teams.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. Listen, this sucked. No one's saying that this was not a game that they should have won because they had it in the bag until they didn't. But it bothers me more when I look back on some of the games against the A's or the Marlins. Like, those are the games that you should have won, so you're not in a position right now in crunch time where it does feel like every single game is so important, because it is. end of the day, a part of me when I see a game like this, I feel mad, but I feel more mad thinking about May in general.
Yeah.
Like, I'm upset. If the Mets don't make the playoffs, they will be the best Major League Baseball team this year that didn't. True or not true?
I think true. I think that would be a fact if they miss out on it. I think to your point, right, it's the against bad teams, and it's also been saying this all year. It just seems like there's a lot of games that have slipped through their fingers. I'm sure that happens to every team throughout the course of a 162 game season, but I feel like for the Mets this year, there's been blown saves, like it just seems like they've had a few that they've come just short, and you come just short for 2 games too many, and all of a sudden, no playoffs for you. So, I don't know. I really don't know if this Mets team has the juice. We're just going to have to see. I mean, they have good moments. We had a lot of good moments this week. They had good moments at a good time. 2 walk-offs earlier this week against the Orioles. We'll get into it. But it just seems like it's a lot of almost, and that's dangerous.
And maybe I am being too positive about it. Maybe you need to just look at the record and take that for what it is.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have good moments, but at the end of the day, this is going to come down to wins and losses. But it's just, I don't know. This whole week, I've even been thinking about, like, take the Yankees, for instance, who, because of all of the wins that they accumulated in the beginning of the season, it's like there's just no way that they're not going to make the playoffs.
Right.
But I think they're actually like a bad team for the most part. They have 2 great guys, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, and everybody else sucks. They literally stink.
Yeah.
But their record is so good. That's
Yeah.
that's what frustrates me, and why I think Why Am I a Mets Fan again is such a great name for it. Because to me, I think if the Mets do make it into the playoffs, there's no doubt in my mind that they have the potential to go on a deep run. But they have to make it there.
Yeah. I think the Mets are a perfect example of this year. Like, you can look at this season, and it's a perfect example of why slow starts come back to hurt you. Not just in April. We know the Mets had a terrible May. Those 2 months, they come back to haunt you. I mean, sure, you played great baseball now for 3 months after that, but those 2 months, you accumulated a lot of losses that could keep you out of the playoffs.
Haunting.
Just
haunting.
It'll haunt you.
Good time to just let you know, by the way, still, this is true every week, but you can find us wherever you get your podcast. You can listen to us. You can watch us on YouTube, and we are on all different social medias. And soon enough, Dan the intern will actually be here in person, which is something we're really looking forward to. So find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it, we're there.
And good time to tell you that we are switching our drop date. We told you last week, Sam is moving full-time into sports here, got a new job, very exciting, but we are going to be putting out the episodes on Tuesday mornings now instead of Monday mornings. Sorry, that's just what's necessary. It is what it is. This is our last.
That's showbiz.
That's showbiz. It's our last Monday night or Monday morning drop. Sorry.
Anyway, yeah, it will be Tuesday from now on. And honestly, maybe that's a good thing because I do feel like a lot of the times we're recording during a Sunday game anyway.
Yeah.
So please look for our episodes on Tuesday morning. That's our new drop date. To your point earlier, before today, and the bummer of a tone.
We had a good week.
We actually had a good week.
Yeah.
Last week I asked you, what would you feel good about as far as this entire stretch? And I don't remember the exact number you said, but you said they need to win more than they lose.
Yeah.
And since the last time we spoke, they have won 2 out of 3 against the Orioles, and they split the series with the Padres. They could have taken 3.
Yeah.
But we also could be in a worse position than we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the Orioles
Let's
series
do
for
it.
a second, because I think that was the one that I mentioned that had good moments, right? Alvarez walks it off on Monday. Jesse Winker walks it off on Wednesday. Has just the greatest home run celebration of all time. That was, ask me how many times I played that video. That was just fantastic of him throwing the helmet. His hair is like flowing in the wind.
He's so damn majestic.
Nothing short of majestic. You just took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, it was crazy. Citi Field was rocking. If that's what Citi Field looks like on a Wednesday afternoon in August, get back to me in October. I really want this team full of this players. I know this is like the least hot, the not hottest take of all time, the coldest take of all time. But I really want this team with this players to make it into the playoffs because I love them. Like, I think this is a really fun group, and I just want this group to play October baseball in Citi Field.
It feels like they've earned it.
Yeah.
It feels like they deserve it. But you have to prove that.
Yeah.
End of the day, you have to prove that. And the May and all the records from the earlier parts of the season, it's not going anywhere. So now they're going to have to earn it. And in a way that feels like sort of a beautiful end to the season. And it feels like it almost makes sense that they'd have to really work hard just to get that opportunity.
Yeah.
But do it and we'll see what happens. Yes, so the Mets won both of those walk-offs 4-3. And mind you, the Orioles, we're talking about a really good team here.
Yeah.
They have the second best record in the AL behind the Yankees. And even the Jumbotron, when you talk about some of the electricity was there, the Mets or whoever is running that board, give that man a raise, said, I want you to put the word out there that we back up. It's a meme. If
The
you're
meme
not
with the
familiar
Mets
with
hat,
it,
so good.
look it up.
Rays.
Rays. But it speaks to yes, the crowd and the fan and the fans and everything that's surrounding this team. But those were some big boy games where they really needed to prove themselves, and they did. So it's not like everything is going terribly, and I'm not going to just throw in the towel and say that the season is over because of one loss today. What I am going to say, though, is the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And we can all kind of feel that. How many games are left? Around 30?
Yeah, I mean,
something
around a
like
month.
that.
Right, yeah.
Like, there is not, like, to me, 2.5 games back is like, that is like the furthest it can be. Like once you're getting to the point where it's 3.5 games back, I don't think people understand how long it actually takes to chase a team like that. And the Braves aren't playing bad baseball right now.
The Braves refuse to lose. They literally they won 6 out of their last 7 before today. So not giving the Mets many opportunities to make up that ground. But yeah, like you said, the Orioles a good team. That was some good momentum. At the same time, not to always be a hater, right? Those 2 walk-offs, great moments. I am a hater, but great moments. They need to start stringing together some more consistently good at-bats with runners in scoring position, even through the wins this week. Glad they took 2 out of 3. Glad they split the series with the Padres. But, like, they're relying on the long ball and the home run just way too much at the last moment, even in those walk-off scenarios. Like, I don't want you to have to walk it off, as nice as that is. I want you to string together some offense earlier in the game, just with runners in scoring position. I mean, just put some hits together. Like, let's just start playing Little League baseball again. It's just, they're relying a little bit too much on the home run, and that's never a recipe for success, even when it is working out. So, again, we've been saying it for weeks and weeks. Better at-bats with runners in scoring position needs to occur.
They could have 100 great moments this season, but with 100 great moments and a quarter, I can make a phone call. I need wins.
That was good.
You like that one?
That was good.
Put that in the intro.
That was nice. Yes, put that in the intro.
But again, it's not just the Orioles, right? We had this Padres series, and Thursday it was an 8-3 win. Friday, 7-0 loss. Saturday, 7-1 win. Thanks to our king. You dropped this crown.
Oh, he
Lindor.
did. He did drop his crown.
Grand salami. You already know. And then another home run. He was and is cooking.
I never know when the grand salami is coming from you, and it does just shock me every time. Anyways, yeah, he really took control on Saturday, pretty much single-handedly won that game for the Mets. And we talk about it every week, but I think this is another good week to talk about it because it feels like it's starting to get some more national attention in terms of Lindor's MVP campaign. I think that was something Mets fans were saying for a while. Now it's actually becoming a thing on the national scope. Jeff Passan wrote an article about it this week, which had some great stuff that we'll talk about in a minute. But I mean, he's on a tear. He's hitting .345 in his last 7 games. He is at .928 OPS since the Mets moved him to leadoff a couple months ago, which is just absurd. And he's now tied for the most home runs on the team with Alonso. So Lindor is having a great year. We're lucky to be able to witness it. Arguably one of the best of his career, even with the terrible slide that he was in April and May. So it makes you wonder if he didn't start so slow, what would his numbers look like now?
And I see this quote here. This quote was initially from Lindor. Yes, the MVPs are not won in June and July. They're won in August and September.
Yeah, in the Jeff Passan article.
Okay. Because, yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
100%.
And I think he's earned it. It's so interesting still when you think about the whole he's not an all-star and now he could potentially be an MVP. And thank you, by the way, to James Buckley for giving us some of those stats. Really interesting to find out some of those numbers. He is... It's like every single day there's something that he's doing that's making me think one of two things. Either he deserves to be the MVP or he deserves to be a captain. I think that once every day, today included. I don't know if you saw, there was a clip on Twitter where there was someone who was holding up a sign that said like Lindor is my hero, and he went over and signed the poster.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
that's really cute.
No, you should look. It was a moment. Not to mention like Mets fans. Really, like, kudos to them. Like, they're traveling very well to the West Coast. Have you noticed that?
MVP chance on the road in San Diego for Lindor. I mean, that's something. I know there's a lot of New York transplants on the West Coast, but yeah.
No, it ultimately still matters. Even Mendoza was saying it about Lindor on Saturday. We're witnessing greatness. And he has an on-base streak of 23 games going into today. Did he get on base again today?
I honestly don't know.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that is amazing, though.
For sure. The Passan article, if you haven't read it, definitely go back and do so. It's a great read. It kind of puts into context not just this year and why he has a legitimate MVP chase going on, but also just he's on a Hall of Fame track. That's something we've been saying, but that's something that was in the article. This week, he became the first shortstop ever with 3 seasons of 25-plus home runs, 25-plus steals. And I mean, he refuses to take a day off. He literally hasn't missed a game all season. Mendoza keeps saying he's trying to rest him. He's like, no, I'll take off when the team's off on Monday. He's like, no, Mendy, I'll be off Monday. Yeah, well, the team's off on Monday. That is the true stuff of a captain and a leader. Like, he wants to go out there every day and make sure that he is putting his best foot forward to make the Mets win games, because now he knows that it's crunch time. So, yeah, it's going to be tough with Ohtani. To be honest with you, Ohtani has a gaudier stat line. I mean, in comparison to Lindor, Ohtani's hitting .294, 41 home runs, 40 steals, 94 RBI. He's not pitching this season after his elbow surgery. But something I do think is interesting.
The fact that on top of all that, he's a pitcher.
Yeah, Ohtani's just the Babe Ruth of our generation, and that's
just
a fact.
Insane.
I do wonder, though. Now, you can't argue with those stats, all right? On paper, Ohtani deserves to win that award.
Go ahead.
Of right now.
We'll hear the argument.
However, my argument for you, no pure DH has ever won the MVP. Ohtani is only a DH. Now, he's not pitching this year. He obviously doesn't play another position in the field, so he just DHs. Lindor, I think a big part of his game, as much as we talk about the hitting and he plays phenomenal shortstop. I mean, he is a multi-time Gold Glover. He's out there flashing the glove every single day for the Mets up the middle. And Ohtani already has 2 MVP awards in 2021 and 2023. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't deserve to win it this year again. Sure, that has no argument in terms of the discussion who should win this year. But I don't know. Is there a little bit of voter fatigue? He already has 2. He's not playing the field. I don't know. I think the next month, Ohtani shows no signs of slowing down. He already has 40 steals, like I said, 40 home runs on the year. It's ridiculous what Ohtani's doing. You just can't discredit what he's doing out there on the West Coast. At the same time, does Francisco Lindor have an argument? He has an argument.
He has an argument. Right now, if you had to ask me, and I personally was a voter, I'm voting for Ohtani.
I agree.
And if anyone wants to dispute me on that, I'm totally fine with it. That's just the place where I stand right now. But I really do like what you said about his defense and what he's been able to do there. Not a bad call.
And just as a vocal leader on the Mets, we've talked about that enough, but just that captain type atmosphere, that leadership, whatever. I know that doesn't go into awards and into voting, but it's just a fact. I also would have voted for Ohtani if the season ended today. There also is a month left. If Lindor has some heroics that all of a sudden propel the Mets into the playoffs single-handedly, then that's a different talk too.
I want to read this quote that Mendy did say on Lindor about him refusing to take a day off, because I know, to your point, attitude is not included in that voting, but maybe it should be. He said, on one hand, it's kind of frustrating. You don't want the guy to burn himself out. But on the other hand, what a great example and what a great gift that you have, not having to urge your leader and your star to be the example setter for everyone else. He just naturally gravitates to that. Understand that too. Like, there are some teams where you might have a star player, but just because you're a star player does not mean you're a leader.
Yeah.
A lot of the times that's what ends up happening, but it's not true on every single team. So to have a guy who is the best leader and also right now is the best player on your team, that's special. It really is.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this, right? Even in the 4 or 5 years that Lindor has been in New York, he's grown up. He's 30 now. He was obviously much younger when he joined the team. He's grown up. He's really turned into that leadership voice, the guy who is going around picking everybody up. We've talked about that extensively. I just think whatever happens with the rest of Lindor's career, his contract runs through the 2031 season. He will be 38 around the time that ends. He is, whatever happens here, if Lindor is winning a World Series, it's with the Mets. If Lindor is going into Cooperstown, it's likely with the Mets hat. So obviously, it's in his best interest to try to propel this team forward, to try to do whatever he can to make this team win, which he's been doing down the stretch.
And you know what? Credit to him in the sense that he always says that to him the job is not over because he hasn't won that World Series. And he will never, ever, I think, feel completely fulfilled and satisfied until he accomplishes that, which shows you what he believes that they're capable of.
Lindor's starting to have the David Wright character arc that it's like you're going to feel real bad if he never wins a World Series, and obviously never with the Mets, but just, like with the Mets in his career. He's starting to have that
character arc.
Journey. He's starting to take the David Wright character arc, although I hope he doesn't continue down it because that means he'd have a career-ending injury. So anyways, we love Francisco Lindor.
Don't even say that.
That's all.
Yeah, so we'll leave that note on Lindor. We also wanted to discuss the state of this rotation, specifically pointing out David Peterson, who has been on fire.
Yeah.
He's getting better and better as the season goes on, and he's playing well in moments where it really matters. He's allowed just 6 earned runs in 5 starts in August and now has the 7th best ERA in the National League at 2.85. He's been a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me even 1 month ago, too, that David Peterson had a chance to finish top 10 in the NL and ERA for the year, I would have looked at you funny for sure. He's been huge for the Mets. But the rest of the rotation, behind kind of your Severino, Manaea has been really good. Peterson, the question marks are arising, especially with Blackburn's injury this week.
I love Manaea.
Yeah,
I know we're not necessarily talking about that, but I really love that guy.
Yeah.
He's so good. But yeah, so Blackburn, he hits the IL with a right hand contusion after getting hit in Friday's game. It's not broken. Right now, Mendoza said he should be back after the 15 days. The next bullet, I'll just say it.
Just say it.
He mentioned Tylor Megill as the primary candidate to take his spot in the rotation for the time being.
Tylor Megill has more lives than a cat, okay? If a cat has 9 lives, Tylor Megill has 16. He has double. Tylor Megill is just... Listen, I won't go off on a Tylor Megill rant, but just in my eyes, if you're the Mets, you've seen what Tylor Megill can do for you, and it's not a whole lot. At this point, we'll talk about the September call-ups in a minute, but to fill that 1 or 2 rotation turn in the absence of Blackburn, they have not been great in AAA this year, right? Vassell, Joey Lucchesi, Dom Hamill, they all have kind of high ERAs in AAA Syracuse. I don't think any of the 3 of those guys had the year that they wanted to. At the same time, you know the product that Tylor Megill is most likely giving you. Give one of the other guys a shot. Maybe Mike Vassell goes up there and he has a great start and all of a sudden you're on to something. Like, to me, we just need some new blood. We just need to try something new, throw a different dart at the dartboard because Megill, we've seen it. We don't love it.
Right.
It is what it is. In my opinion,
I'd be open to trying anything else just for the
open to suggestions.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. They also briefly optioned Brazoban to Syracuse as the corresponding move, but took it back once Blackburn officially hit the IL. I have to say, I'm not necessarily taking back my trade deadline grade, but damn, the production has not really been what I was hoping that it was going to be.
Severe disappointment from Brazoban. He's been really not good. I was surprised to really see that he was the choice to go down to Syracuse. Now, he never got on that plane. He stayed in New York and then is now fine since Blackburn's on the IL.
Right.
But he has not been good. And Ottavino hasn't been good either. But a guy like Brazoban has an option. Ottavino, I presume, does not. So it is
Winker
what it is.
is like the 1 star from that deadline.
Yeah. But rotation speaking, them, but also Quintana. Quintana had a good start today, so that was some improvement. His last 4 before this were really horrific. He had a 4.57 ERA going into the day. Obviously, that's improved a bit. Each guy in this rotation has 6 or 7 starts left, and to me, it's like, how am I throwing Jose Quintana out there again 6 more times? I really would not like to do that.
I see your question here. Who's your 3-man playoff rotation if the postseason started tomorrow? That's also going to be our question of the week. Feel free to drop that in the comments. For you?
I think it's pretty much a no-brainer, right? Severino, Manaea, Peterson.
That's what I was going to
really
say.
Emerged really good. Manaea's having maybe the best year of his career. So those 3, but behind those 3, that's kind of the problem. Do I feel really good about, any playoff rotation, you kind of have that 4th guy, all right, who would make a spot start if the schedule didn't shake out. I don't feel good about really anyone behind those 3. So my take of the week is give someone else a chance. Not named Tylor Megill. Just maybe, I don't know, maybe Mike Vassell just has a great start. Maybe Joey Lucchesi has a great start. Lucchesi, we've seen him a couple times in New York too, Lucchesi, but
I don't know.
They just didn't get that. I said this at the deadline. They did not get the starting rotation depth that they needed, and it's coming back to bite them, and I'm not surprised.
I know. I was going to say the word haunt again, but I didn't want to overuse it. But that actually does feel like a haunting moment.
Yep.
Like when you're looking back on that and you're like, they just needed that one big fish. Needed that shark.
Didn't get a big fish.
Didn't get a big fish. You know what I mean?
Actually, barely went fishing at all. Kind of caught some minnows.
I honestly envision it as one of those photos where you're like pointing at the fish, but it's not like
the fish is
not
small.
like the fish is like, you're like, I've caught other ones like this.
It was
like,
David Stearns pointing at the fish, and you're like, all right, I don't know. Okay. Not impressed.
No, not impressed. Actually, never impressed by a photo of anyone pointing at a fish. Just gonna say it.
If you're a man, don't post pictures holding
please
fish.
don't.
Anyways.
We're begging you. If you take away one thing from this podcast, there will be no more fish photos.
If I'm trying to show my mom your Instagram, I don't want to show her you holding a fish. Anyways,
I'm dead.
Moving on.
Anyway, so now we're kind of shifting gears, talking about who is in line for the September roster call-ups. The active rosters are expanding from 26 to 28 on September 1st, which is next Sunday. And there's a couple different people who we're looking at as people who could potentially be in these spots.
Yeah, so I'm sure it'll be a big topic next week when we sit down. We'll know.
Yeah.
But we said before this that it needed to be a bat and an arm, most likely.
Yep.
We know who the bat's not going to be. Unfortunately, Brett Baty was hit by a pitch in Thursday night's game, fractured his left index finger. He'll be out 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, it pretty much effectively he's done for the year.
That is terrible.
I feel so bad for the guy.
Terrible.
He gets hurt. He only saw 50 games in the majors this year before getting sent down. Obviously, Vientos has been great. But then he does all this work in Syracuse all summer. He's been
great.
Pretty good. Plays great, right? Here's the stat lines here somewhere. Yeah, stat line in the minors this year: 16 home runs, 43 RBI in Syracuse this summer. Pretty good. Earned that September call up for sure. Gets hurt the week before, so it's really just a tough scene.
Do you guys want to see Brett Baty come back as a Met next year? Can you tell us that in the comments? Because I think we're still torn at this table.
I think I'm less torn than I was. I was anticipating a September of Brett Baty, and if that didn't go well, I was maybe ready to shut that door. But now that we don't get that, I'm like, I feel like we have unfinished business. I do think he needs to come back in spring training and try to crack the roster again because we just have unfinished business with Brett Baty.
This is like the ex who you let go of and you have no idea if he's going to downgrade or completely glow up.
You're so right.
It's so tough. It's
so
like,
right.
What do you do? Do you bet on the future? I don't know.
And he's a really nice guy. From when I talked to him when he was down here, really nice guy. Not all of them are nice guys, just to put it nicely.
Yeah.
But he was a really nice guy and basically spent the entire time talking about how happy he was for Vientos, Alvarez, like the guys that he was coming up with that were in New York and he's down here. He just spent the entire interview talking about how happy he was for them and for the team and not about himself. So I'm rooting for Brett Baty.
Me too, whether he stays or not. So just other guys who are on this list. You have a guy like Sproat, you have Acuna, you have Mike Vassell, you have Drew Gilbert, you have Luke Ritter. Anyone else? Any other people sticking out to you?
I mean, listen, if it still is a bat and an arm, which is what I would think, I don't know who the arm is at this point because, as I've said 3 times now, Vassell, Hamill, and Lucchesi have not had great ERAs down here, but also I'm advocating to give him a shot, so give him a shot.
What about Hamill? Like, honestly...
Hamill has the worst ERA of the 3.
And for some reason, I feel more confident with him than anyone else who's been named so far, and I'm not even really sure why that is.
I feel confident about Vassell because he's picked it up. Vassell's had a good couple months.
I'd be happy to see it.
Bad first half, but yeah, I'd be happy to see it too. Sproat just got here, so I really honestly doubt it's going to be Sproat. Maybe they take a flyer on Sproat, which I wouldn't be mad at, but he just got here. Drew Gilbert, who's one of their top prospects that we haven't really talked about much this season.
No, we haven't.
Because he was hurt for the bulk of the year. But he just got back, and he's really been raking. He has 3 home runs in his last 5 days. I think he hit another one today. I don't know if they've seen enough, but maybe he's the bat. Although I feel like it's going to be Acuna, who Acuna hasn't wowed this year. He's been okay. I don't think he's lived up to the lofty expectations they had for him. Or our old friend DJ Stewart is down in Syracuse, so it could be him. Which that's another case of I've seen it, you know? Nah. Ugh. Sorry.
That's the best sound effect that you brought to this podcast.
That's become my
and it's been coming out a lot lately. What a imagine being on the other side of that sound from Ashley. Like, honestly, how demeaning. Anyway. No, honestly, it's a good question though. Like, do you go with the hot hand or do you go with somebody who's already had more experience? I'm not sure. That must be a tough position to be in.
Maybe you take a flyer on one of the two, right? Maybe it's, God help us, DJ Stewart is the hitter, but then maybe you take a flyer on one of the pitchers. I don't know. I just feel like now's the time to, like I just said, throw a new dart at the dartboard.
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll see about it.
So we will see. We are not necessarily doing a Syracuse Mets segment this week just because we were talking about them throughout the course of the episode. Up next for the Mets, it's 3 at the Diamondbacks, 3 at the White Sox to conclude the road trip. White Sox, in my opinion, you just have to win 3 out of 3. You just have to. You have to.
The White Sox just hit 100 losses. Like, if the Mets, God so help me, if the Mets lose 2 out of 3 to the White Sox, or the clock is ticking. All right, I don't have a watch, but like you said earlier, you don't have time to lose to the White Sox right now. Your alarm's going off.
It really is. It really is. It's no joke. You've already snoozed it. You gotta get up. Yeah. You gotta get up, or you're gonna miss the event. D-backs, we'll see. I mean, everything has been going good so far on this road trip, or at least it has gone serviceable. I will not say anything lower than that. I feel like based on what we both said, if they were able to pull 2 out of 3 away with Arizona, I would feel like they successfully did what we had hoped they would do.
Because they split with the Padres today, now you're in a spot where I need 2 out of 3 from Arizona. If they would have simply been able to get 5 more outs today, you would have been like, okay, if they lose to Arizona, the sky's not falling. They need every win they can get. That's all.
5 outs feels like a long way. Like, it's a long way home from the 5-out mark with this team.
Oh God. 6 outs? Lord help us.
You may as well just go to Staten Island and drive in the car with Ashley's dad at that point.
No, don't do that. Wouldn't recommend.
Final thoughts?
My final thought is our tweet/stat of the week, which we didn't mention and was brought to us by a listener at JD602. It was great. Thank you so much for sending this to us on Twitter. He provided us with the latest wildcard tiebreaker scenarios, which is something that could definitely come into play with how close this race is. The Giants have the tiebreaker over the Mets. The Giants have fallen a little bit, but that just is what it is. Don't love to hear that. The Mets must win 2 of 3 in Arizona to have that wildcard tiebreaker. That could surely come into play. The Mets had to win 1 of 4 in San Diego to have the tiebreaker, so they do have the tiebreaker over the Padres. They also have it over the Cardinals, who are not so relevant lately. And they must win 2 of 3 in their last series with Atlanta to have that tiebreaker, which I would argue right now is the most important one, is the Braves.
By the way, all of that is coming from JD602 on Twitter.
Yes.
So thanks so much for that. That is really insightful. Yeah, I would agree. The Braves, I can't believe out of all teams, it's just, here we are again. It's giving me flashbacks of 2022 and not the good kind. But we will just have to see what happens. And yeah, my final thought, honestly, I appreciate all these kind of what ifs here. But for me, living in the present, all I can really say is that 2.5 games back right now with about 30 games left is just about the most that I feel comfortable with. I think anything past that, you're really pushing your luck and you're adding on too much pressure. So much pressure that I don't know that the Mets could handle it when it really is crunch time.
I agree, because you're starting to get down to, like we said, you got 1 month. It's no longer you got all this time to play with. You got 1 month. I agree with you. And mind you, that's for the 3rd wild card, right? So if we're going to make any move here to pass the Padres or the Diamondbacks, we really got to get on that horse. So the Mets are dancing with the devil. They really are.
The time is now, folks. We will plan to see you back here next Tuesday
morning.
That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.